baseball in America's pastime, but behind the heroics, the triumphs, and the legendary moments, there exists a darker side. A side shaped by controversy, betrayal, and scandal. Today, we dive into the 10 most notorious villains the sport has ever seen, each leaving a legacy of chaos and corruption. Hold tight, this countdown is not for the faint-hearted. Let's start with one of the most complex figures in the history of baseball. Pete Rose. Rose was not just a player, he was an institution. He broke records, earned accolades, and became a symbol of grit and determination. But it all came crashing down in the 1980s, when allegations surfaced that he had bet on baseball games, including ones involving his own team. His passionate denials gave way to a final confession decades later. Despite being one of the greatest hitters in the sport, Pete Rose's involvement in gambling led to a permanent ban from the sport. He may have achieved greatness with his 4,256 hits, but his tarnished legacy reminds us that integrity is more important than any record. Rose's fall from grace shattered the perception of him as a hero, leaving fans to wrestle with the question of whether his accomplishments should be tainted by his actions off the field. Barry Bonds was the king of the long ball, smashing home runs at a rate that had fans and players alike in awe. But when he broke the single-season home run record and then went on to surpass Hank Aaron's career home run record, whispers began to grow louder. The whispers turned into accusations that Bonds was using steroids to fuel his ascent. Despite being one of the most gifted hitters the game had ever seen, Bonds' reputation was forever marked by the question of whether his success was truly earned. The media frenzy, the grand jury testimony, and the eventual conviction for obstruction of justice all sealed his legacy in infamy. The steroid era was never more personified than in Barry Bonds, a man who had it all yet was forever tainted by the suspicion that his greatness came at a price. Cobb was a man who embodied the vicious spirit of competition, but his reputation off the field was even more toxic than his ferocity on it. Cobb was known for his incredible skill, his aggressive base running, and his ruthless approach to the game. But his legacy is also marred by his racist actions and violent tendencies. Cobb was notorious for attacking fans and opposing players alike, and his racism was no secret. He once famously said, "I am not a bad man, I am a great man, I just hate an S." His attitude off the field was as destructive as his performance on it, and it was this darker side that overshadowed his accomplishments. Cobb's reputation as one of the greatest players of all time is a complicated one, forever stained by his bigotry and violent tendencies. His legacy is a stark reminder that greatness on the field does not excuse a lack of humanity off it. The Black Sox Scandal of 1919 is one of the darkest chapters in baseball history, and Shoeless Joe Jackson is at the center of it. Jackson, a star of the Chicago White Sox, was involved in one of the most infamous acts of betrayal in the history of sports. Along with 7 of his teammates, Jackson was accused of conspiring to throw the World Series in exchange for money from gamblers. Jackson's involvement remains a topic of heated debate to this day. Some believe he was guilty, others argue that he was an innocent victim of a larger conspiracy. Regardless of where you stand, his name is forever tied to the scandal, and his banishment from the sport for allegedly fixing the World Series cast a shadow over the game's integrity for decades. Was Jackson a villain, or simply a man caught in the wrong place at the wrong time? Either way, his story is a tragic reminder of how a moment of greed can change everything. Alex Rodriguez, or A-Rod, was a prodigy. He was the future of baseball, destined to become one of the greatest players in the game's history. And for a time, he was. But his career, like so many others, was overshadowed by scandal. In 2009, after years of rumors and speculation, Rodriguez admitted to using performance-enhancing drugs during his tenure with the Texas Rangers. The admission rocked the baseball world, and his subsequent suspensions added fuel to the fire. Despite his incredible skill and a 696 home run career, A-Rod's legacy will always be tainted by his association with the steroid era. The man who had everything, money, fame, records, was brought down by his own decision to cheat the game. While some fans may have forgiven him, others will never forget the stain he left on the sport. Curt Schilling was a pitcher who helped lead the Boston Red Sox to their first World Series title in 86 years in 2004. But it wasn't just his on-field performance that made him notorious. Schilling became a villain to many due to his inflammatory political views and controversial statements. He was outspoken on social media, making comments that alienated fans, players, and even former teammates. His outspoken support for controversial political figures and his attempts to stoke division only added to his reputation as a villain. Schilling's actions off the field were so divisive that it overshadowed his on-field success, leaving a legacy of anger and division. While his bloody sock moment in the 2004 World Series will always be remembered, so too will his polarizing personality and views that tarnished his place in the game's history. The Black Sox Scandal wasn't just about one player, it was about a group of players who betrayed the sport for money. Eddie Cicotte, Chick Gandil, and their teammates were part of a plan to intentionally lose the 1919 World Series to the Cincinnati Reds. The players were promised money by gamblers in exchange for throwing the games. While some of the players fully participated in the conspiracy, others, like Shoeless Joe Jackson, are still debated. Regardless, their collective actions led to the permanent banishment of 8 players from baseball. The Black Sox Scandal remains one of the most devastating events in baseball history, shaking the very foundation of the sport and leaving an indelible stain on its legacy. In recent years, the Houston Astros have been embroiled in one of the most notorious cheating scandals in modern baseball history. In 2017, the Astros used sophisticated technology to steal signs during their World Series run. Cameras were placed in the outfield to capture the opposing team's signs, and the Astros would use this information to relay the pitches to their batters. The scandal rocked the sport, with players, managers, and fans alike denouncing the Astros' actions. While they won the 2017 World Series, their victory is tainted, with many believing their championship was built on deceit. The Astros' cheating scandal will forever be remembered as one of the darkest moments in baseball, and their punishment, or lack thereof, remains a source of anger for many in the baseball community. The steroid era is the most insidious villain in baseball history. This period, spanning from the 1980s to the early 2000s, saw some of the game's biggest stars, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, Rafael Palmeiro, accused of using performance-enhancing drugs. While these players hit home runs at a record pace, the public's trust in the game was shattered. Fans began to question whether the records set by these players were truly legitimate. This era also brought forth the troubling reality of how widespread steroid use was in the sport, with countless players being linked to PEDs. The steroid era cast a dark cloud over the game, making us question the authenticity of achievements and forever altering how we view success in sports. No single player embodied the chaos of this era more than Barry Bonds, but his story is just one piece of the larger scandal that forever changed baseball. At number 1, we have a figure who didn't even step onto the field, but changed the game forever. Arnold Rothstein, the infamous gambler, is often considered the mastermind behind the Black Sox Scandal. In 1919, Rothstein, a notorious figure in organized crime, is believed to have orchestrated the fixing of the World Series between the Chicago White Sox and the Cincinnati Reds. Rothstein, a man whose influence and reach extended far beyond the realm of baseball, used his connections to corrupt the very foundation of the game. He promised a group of White Sox players a huge payoff if they threw the series, and they took the bait. This led to one of the most devastating scandals in sports history for generations to come. Even though Rothstein was never convicted of being directly involved in the fix, his shadow looms large over the scandal, making him the ultimate villain in baseball's dark history. His influence and the subsequent fallout from the Black Sox scandal changed the way baseball viewed gambling forever. To this day, his name is synonymous with corruption and betrayal, forever cementing his place as the greatest villain in baseball history. From legends to liabilities, these villains left their mark on baseball. Some with their actions, others with the legacy they tarnished. Who do you think deserves the top spot as the biggest villain in baseball history? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the dark side of sports.